The world of gangs isn't just about brutal crime, it's also a mysterious web of connections that have shaped the fate of entire countries. It's a dark part of history where their own rules apply, rules of loyalty, silence, and blood. In these groups, betrayal meant death, and loyalty was often rewarded with huge amounts of money and endless power. Gangs could scare whole cities, stop economies, and control politicians at the very top. Even though many of them worked in the shadows, their influence went much further than we might think. From governments to businesses and even into popular culture, which has made them almost legendary symbols. Today, I'm taking you on a journey through the most ruthless, powerful and famous crime groups in history, from the Sicilian Cosa Nostra through the bloody drug cartels in America, all the way to the Asian Triads and the Japanese Yakuza. This is a story about a dark world that, despite its brutality, still fascinates and sends shivers down your spine today. Cosa Nostra, which literally means our thing. It's one of the most famous and legendary criminal organizations in history. It started in Sicily in the 1800s, during a time of big problems and poverty. Local people were looking for protection from the unfair government and rich landowners who took advantage of them. The Mafia quickly grew strong through fear, loyalty, and violence. The way it worked was based on a rule called omerta, a total vow of silence. Members couldn't tell the Mafia's secrets no matter what. If you broke this rule, there was only one outcome: death. Because of this strict rule, the Cosa Nostra stayed almost untouchable for decades. In the 20th century, the Sicilian Mafia grew all over the world. They were in charge of smuggling alcohol during Prohibition in the United States, and later, they dealt in drugs and weapons. In the 1980s, their yearly earnings were thought to be billions of dollars, which made them more powerful than many legal companies. What's interesting is that the Cosa Nostra acted like a well-organized country within a country. In Sicily, they controlled entire towns, forced businesses to pay protection money, and even decided local elections. It was so deeply rooted in society that for many people, paying the Mafia pizzo, which was like a protection tax, became a normal part of life. But the dark history of the Mafia isn't just about money and power, it's also about brutal wars within itself. In the 1980s, Sicilian streets ran with blood fights between different groups, led to hundreds of murders. In response, the Italian government started a strong fight against them, and judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino became symbols of this effort. Sadly, both were killed in bomb attacks, but their deaths caused huge protests and forced the government to act even tougher against the Mafia. The Cosa Nostra still exists today, though it's not as strong as it once was. But it still causes fear, and its story shows how an organization from a small island could shake up the whole world. The Yakuza, a name that instantly brings respect and fear in Japan. It's one of the oldest and most organized crime groups in the world. Their beginnings go all the way back to the 17th century, when they started as groups of gamblers and street vendors who created their own rules and ways of doing things. The Yakuza works like a huge company with a clear chain of command, a boss called an oyabun, and a bunch of loyal members called kobun. The relationship is like a family bond. The boss gives protection and care, and in return demands complete obedience. What's interesting is that Yakuza members seal this bond with a symbolic ritual by drinking sake together with their superior. In their best times, the Yakuza had over 200,000 members. That's more than the army of many countries. Today, that number has dropped to about 20,000, but they are still incredibly powerful. Their activities include everything: gambling, prostitution, drug trafficking, and even legal businesses like construction or the entertainment industry. Tattoos are a symbol of the Yakuza entire bodies, covered in complex, colorful designs that tell the story of a member. However, showing tattoos in public places like bathhouses or swimming pools is often forbidden precisely because of these ties to the Mafia.
One of the most severe rituals in this organization is yubitsume, which is cutting off a part of the little finger. This is punishment for mistakes or disobedience, a way to show regret to the boss and proof of loyalty.
Interestingly, the Yakuza also played a role in helping the community. After the big earthquake in Kobe in the 90s, it was Yakuza members who were the first to deliver food and water to those affected. But make no mistake, their main goal has always been and still is profit and control. Even though Japanese authorities have been tightening rules and fighting the Mafia for years, the Yakuza still operates, adapting to new times, more and more often working through legal companies and hidden investments. This shows how deeply rooted it is in the fabric of Japanese society. When we talk about drug empires, one name immediately comes to mind: Pablo Escobar. In the 1980s, he was the leader of the Medellín Cartel, an organization that, for a time, had almost unlimited power in Colombia and influence all over the world. Escobar started small, but in a short time, he built a drug empire that produced and smuggled cocaine to the United States, Europe, and many other places. It's estimated that at its peak, the Medellin Cartel controlled as much as 80% of the global cocaine trade. That meant billions of dollars flowing in every year. Escobar was so rich that, according to a story, his family burned piles of banknotes to keep warm on cold nights. He stored so much money that every year he lost millions of dollars, eaten by rats. But with fortune came brutality. The Medellin Cartel waged a bloody war with the police, military, and politicians. Escobar had no mercy bombings. Assassinations of judges, ministers, and journalists were common. In the 1980s and 1990s, Colombia was in a constant civil war, mainly caused by the cartel's activities. However, Escobar also knew how to win people over. In his hometown of Medellin, he built housing, sports fields, and schools, becoming almost a hero to the poorer people. To some, he was a ruthless killer. To others, he was a Robin Hood who shared his wealth. The end of this story was Escobar's death in 1993 during a shootout with Colombian police. This event ended the Medellin cartel's power, but his legend lives on today. An interesting fact is that Pablo Escobar was on Forbes magazine's list of the world's richest people. His fortune was estimated at around $30 billion. This shows how much influence one man and his organization had on the global economy and politics. The Medellin Cartel was one of the most brutal gangs in world history, but also one of the most amazing examples of how organized crime can become part of a whole country's history. When we hear the name MS-13, it sends shivers down many people's spines. Salvatrucha is one of the most brutal and ruthless gangs in the world. Its beginnings go back to the 1980s, when immigrants from El Salvador fleeing civil war started to organize in Los Angeles to protect themselves from other gangs. What started as a way to defend themselves quickly turned into one of the most terrifying criminal groups in history. Today, Mississippi 13 is active not only in Central America and the United States, but also in Canada, Mexico, and even Europe. It's thought that this gang has tens of thousands of members worldwide. Their signature look is their tattoos, entire faces and bodies covered in gang symbols, which show loyalty but also scare off enemies. What makes MS-13 different from other gangs is how violent they are. They scare whole communities, control neighborhoods, and get their power from selling drugs, weapons, forcing people to pay them, and smuggling people. In countries like El Salvador and Honduras, Mississippi, 13 has almost become a state within a state. Governments have had to declare emergencies to try and stop what they're doing. One of the most shocking things is that the gang often recruits children. Teenagers and sometimes even younger kids are forced to be loyal through harsh initiation rituals like being beaten by other members or committing their first murders. MS-13 is an example of how a gang can grow into a worldwide group, spreading fear and violence across several continents. The Triads are some of the oldest and most mysterious crime groups in the world. Their roots go back hundreds of years. They started as secret groups fighting against the Qing dynasty in the 17th century, but over time, they changed from patriotic groups into powerful mafia-like organizations. Today, they control big parts of the criminal underworld in China, Hong Kong, Macau, and many other Asian countries. The Triads aren't just one gang. They're a bunch of different groups that follow strict rules and a clear pecking order. Every member has their place, and you can only move up by being loyal, obedient, and doing things that often involve violence. One of the most unique things about the Triads are their initiation rituals. They're full of symbols, secret promises, and complex ceremonies. They're involved in almost every kind of crime, from selling drugs and weapons to prostitution and gambling, and even modern cybercrime. The Triads are known for being able to get into legal businesses. They invest in real estate, restaurants, and financial companies, which makes them harder to track down. Here's an interesting fact. In the 1990s, the Triads had a huge influence on the film industry in Hong Kong. Actors and directors were forced to work with them, and those who refused faced threats and attacks. It's believed that the biggest Triad groups have tens of thousands of members all over the world, from Asia to North America and even Europe. This makes them one of the most global crime organizations in history. The Triads are not just a symbol of crime, but also of culture. You can see them in many movies, books, and video games, but the real story is much darker than what you see in pop culture. These are ruthless groups that have operated in the shadows for centuries, mixing old traditions with a brutal fight for power and money. The Russian Bratva, also known as Vory v Zakone, which means thieves-in-law, is one of the most brutal and powerful mafias in the world. It all started in the Tsar's prisons and the gulags in the Soviet Union. That's where the first rules and ways of working for these underground groups were created. After the Soviet Union fell in the 1990s, the Russian mafia grew hugely. They took advantage of all the political and economic problems happening at the time. The Bratva doesn't work like typical gangs. It's more like a bunch of separate groups that all follow the same rules. Members have to be loyal, never talk to the police, and share their money with the family. A special thing about Russian mobsters are their tattoos. Each one means something, telling the story of the criminal and where they stand in the group. The Bratva does almost every kind of crime you can think of, from selling drugs and weapons to forcing people to pay them and even washing huge amounts of dirty money. What's more, the Russian Mafia is known for getting involved in politics and business. That's what makes them different from many other groups. Because of this, the Bratva actually has a say in the economy and decisions made in different countries. Here's something interesting. In the 1990s, the Russian Mafia started working a lot in the United States, especially in New York and Miami. They controlled gambling, smuggling, and drug dealing there. Even today, the FBI sees the Bratva as one of the biggest dangers to safety around the world. It's thought that the Russian Mafia has tens of thousands of members spread all over the world. Their influence reaches from Moscow across Europe all the way to America and the Middle East. This makes the Bratva one of the most dangerous and global crime groups ever. The Camorra is one of the oldest and most brutal crime groups in Italy. It started way back in the 1700s when the first groups dealing with gambling and forcing people to pay up popped up in Naples. Over time, the Camorra became a real part of city life, hidden but super powerful. Unlike the very organized Cosa Nostra, the Camorra works in a more spread out way. It's made up of dozens, even hundreds of smaller groups. This makes it harder to break them up, because if one leader gets caught, other groups keep going and fight for power. This spread out structure makes the Camorra really dangerous and tough for the police to handle. For years, their main business was drugs, prostitution, selling weapons, and cleaning dirty money. But the Camorra also gets into legal businesses. They control building projects, trash removal, and transportation. In simple terms, this means that in many parts of Naples and Campania, you can't run a business without the Mafia's permission and taxes. One of the most shocking things the Camorra did is called the trash scandal. For years, the group took over waste management, dumping poisonous industrial waste in illegal landfills. The result? Huge pollution and a terrible rise in cancer cases in the Campania region. It's thought that the Camorra has thousands of members today and makes billions of euros every year from both illegal and semi-legal activities. Their influence reaches into local politics, and in some areas of Naples, the Mafia is still more powerful than the government. It's interesting that the Camorra, just like other Italian mafias, has been featured in many books, movies, and TV shows, with Camorra being the most famous. Even though it shows made-up events, many people in Naples say the show is scarily close to what's really happening. The Camorra proves that the Mafia isn't just something from the past, but a living force that can still shape the lives of millions of people. The gangster world isn't just a story of violence and money, it's also a tale about how far human greed and the desire for power can go. Each of these groups had their own ways, culture, and symbols, but they all shared one thing: controlling people through fear and loyalty. Even though many of them have been weakened by police and governments, their shadow still hangs over the world. The Mafia doesn't disappear, it just changes its face. Today they use laptops, money laundering, and cybercrime more often than revolvers. The history of the biggest gangs is a warning that organized crime will always find a way where the government is weak and people are looking for quick money and power. It's also a reminder that the stories we see in movies and TV shows are, in many places, everyday life where lives can be at stake. Because gangs, no matter the era, have one common rule: anyone who tries to go against them quickly learns how thin the line is between freedom and fear. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye for now.